Hi guys, welcome back to the OCD Recovery channel. We have Jade over here. Hi Jade. What's
Hello.
up?
All good over
Um
here.
we've been doing quite a few video chats with people, mainly me and Nick having conversations with each other, or we had one with Alexander last time. So I thought it would be great to have you on the channel. Your videos do really well as well, and
Mm.
you have a really great understanding of not just OCD but also like recovery overall and what acceptance is, what recovery feels like. Um, so
Thank you.
yeah, so do you want to just go ahead and maybe introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us about yourself. Who are
Hmm.
you, Jade, and what do you do?
Thanks. Yeah, it's really cool to be on with you and just to chat because we're obviously friends as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm Jade. I live on the coast in South Wales in the UK. I've got two children, which is awesome for me, given that I had such a rough time with my OCD and never thought I could be a parent. So, yeah, my life basically consists of looking after them and doing a little bit of work. I'm a consultant with marketing. And yeah, just on a quest at the moment to find balance, not in a compulsive way, just in a kind of checking in with myself a bit more to make sure that I'm not sort of overdoing it with work or overdoing it with my kids, and just like getting that healthy balance and not being too compulsive with it. Because I think sort of after OCD recovery, when you're in like a, I would say like your brain is a little bit more settled, it's I don't know if you found this, but my brain sometimes has compulsive traits. So it's not necessarily anxiety ridden. It's just I'll notice that if I go to leave the house and it's messy, I don't like it. I just don't
Mm,
like it. I prefer it to be nice. So I'm pretty good now at switching off those things. But I think I've got a natural tendency to want balance and to want things, in order. And I feel
yeah.
like post recovery, the work is to become even more rational, so that those
Mm,
areas of life just start to just chill a bit, and you become a little bit more relaxed.
yeah. I think I find that interesting because with you and me, we both, I feel like, are people who are, this what social media refers to as OCD, being organized, liking things a certain way,
Yeah.
and so we both are people like that. I think ever since I was a kid, I've always just liked things a certain way, or
Yeah.
I like organizing things, I like sorting things out, cleaning stuff.
Yeah.
But it wasn't ever. So I think the difference, then becomes that if that happens to be your theme, if that happens to be where your discomfort or your fears lie, then doing those things is something that you don't enjoy. You start to become.
Absolutely. That's the difference. If
That's
I
a big
had a day, if I had a whole day to get my life in order, then that would be good. And that is absolutely not OCD suffering, which we know now.
yeah.
And I think that it's just interesting for me to learn about myself. And it's not even the tidiness, because what we don't want to do is have people feel like we're suggesting that an OCD brain likes order. It's
Yeah.
more that, that natural inclination to wanting things sorted. Like the brain will scan, is that relationship with that person okay? Is the house in order? Is my paperwork done? Is this person feeling like I'm not there for them anymore? And it's like this brain scan.
It's something that you also learn from your environment. So both my parents are just very particular organized people. Like my mother likes the house in order. For example, if we ever go on trips, she would leave the
Oh,
house in such an order that by when we come back it feels like we're coming to like a nice and clean
that's
place.
nice.
Um,
I love
my
that.
dad is very particular about get all your chores done, get all your errands done, don't leave anything undone. Yeah, so it's also something I've acquired in my genes and from my environment as well, that I
Mhm.
think that if I live life in this way, I can more or less function better and
Yeah,
get
like
things.
it's a thing that's this is how I view it. So right now, you just saw me as we were setting up for this call, like make this background look semi okay because it is trashed. That's not causing me any anxiety whatsoever. So it's not OCD latching. It's just, it's a preference, isn't it? You'd
It is.
prefer, whereas in the past, I think I used to feel like something bad would happen if things weren't in order. And so I would
Mm,
like get everything done and then nothing bad will happen, or you're not awful, or you're not evil, or you're not horrible. If your environment's nice, I used to get
mm.
obsessed with the words tidy house, tidy mind. And so it
Oh,
latched to my harm POCD themes, where it was like, oh, but if everything looks good on the outside, that makes me good on the inside. Whereas if it's horrible and dirty,
oh,
then that means, oh yeah, I am horrible. That reflects my mind. So I think I used to do it a lot to try and neutralize my brain. Whereas now it's definitely a preference. But I've noticed that, like when people say there's no cure to OCD, I think this is where I relate to that. I don't suffer with OCD anymore, but I am aware that I have a brain that has OCD. It's really
yeah.
weird. Like, I don't suffer with it, but I'm aware that, like, my husband goes crazy at me because when we're about to leave the house, if he's about to give, like, my 1-year-old, like, some beans on toast, but we're on our
Mm,
way out and the lunch will be in 2 hours, I am quite like, but hang on. And then this is probably just a parent thing. I'm very like, but
yeah,
everything needs to be right. And it's sort of the day needs to be so meticulously planned and so perfect that it almost takes out the fun. And I don't give in to that. I have to keep myself mindful of that. And I'll do things like, don't let him give her the beans on toast. And
yeah,
she's not going to want her lunch. And that is cool. And I feel this deep, like, sigh of relief within me to just
yeah,
let go of control a bit.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, I see that in my brother, by the way.
Oh
He,
yeah.
especially when we're traveling together, it can be stressful to travel with him sometimes because he is very like, oh, we must reach this place at this time, we must catch the train
Yeah.
at this time, and it just, and I'm like, uh,
Let's just
even
go with
if
the flow.
something exactly, I mean, I'm not enjoying. I'm just constantly stressed out about uh our plan for the day. Like, I'm not enjoying this anymore. So I completely get that when you overplan and you try to get things perfectly right and meticulously
Mm.
right. Meticulous is a word that he uses quite a lot as well, by the way. So it just becomes very, yeah, unfun.
And I think that is my work now, is like, none of these examples I'm talking about cause me any anxiety whatsoever.
Yeah,
They feel
yeah.
like what a person without OCD would feel about if they're just like super organized. Like Monica from Friends, I relate to a lot. Rules help control the fun. Like, that's something that is like, that's me. I
Exactly.
my cousins still make fun of me. Like, I used to say I need my 8 hours, and that probably was OCD. Like, I'd be really like controlled and like really upset if anyone cheated in games and stuff. But
Mhm.
my work from now on is just starting to loosen those things, because they too are irrational. Like, think, why does I have children? Why does my home? Why can't I be happy until my home is neat and nice? Why can't I just loosen up a little bit? And that for me is just personal growth. It's not really like a problem in life. It's just, how can I grow without obsessing over that?
And it's, so with my journey with contamination OCD is that obviously there was a lot of cleaning that was involved, but that was cleaning that was torturous for me in my head. It's
Yes, it
not
wasn't
something
enjoyable.
good at. As a kid, when I liked to organize my bookshelf and all my things, I always used to really enjoy those things. So when I started having contamination OCD and it started to take over my life, everything started to become contaminated. So in my room, for example, if let's say my mom came in my room and she put a glass in my room and she would
Yeah.
leave it there, because that glass would be contaminated. It would be there for a week or maybe 2 weeks because
Wow.
I did not want to touch it. I was so terrified of even handling those things. So my room would often be an absolute mess, and I was
Yeah, isn't
okay
it
with that.
interesting?
I
Yeah.
didn't do things. And even for example, if clothes have come from the wash and someone has put them in my room for me to put in my closet, they would still be there because they would not be clean for me, and so it would be covered with dust and whatnot, but I would just leave it there because I thought
Yeah,
I
because you
don't want.
weren't it with contamination, obviously, it must be like it's not the dirt that you're scared of, that the dust, it's something else. The clothes entered your room from elsewhere. That's the contamination.
It was like mentally, it was what I thought was contaminated.
Yeah,
So my room would always be dirty. There would be dust and whatnot, and I would be completely okay with that because
yeah.
that meant that I just didn't have to touch anything. So
And
yeah,
your
I mean,
parents, then, given how you've described them, your parents must have gotten really mad with you, and how that must have been really difficult as a child, where you are physically unwell, and really it's difficult for you to tidy. It's not that they must have been like, tidy your room, this is not okay, and you're like, I can't, like that must have been
it,
horrible.
I mean,
Or did you
so
or did you have a mum who would come in and clean up for her little boy?
I
I
mean,
love those mums.
right, she would like come in. We have people who help around the house as well,
Oh,
so they would
nice.
would do things and like often they would be not in the way I wanted them, obviously based on my contamination OCD, but I would be like, okay, at least I didn't have to handle this.
Yeah,
That sense. So, but it was very difficult, I think, because my family did not know how to help me.
yeah.
And eventually, my me not touching things, me not holding things, even something like, oh, can you hand me that plate? I would not do that
It
because,
became
and
difficult.
it became
Wow.
like very simple tasks became difficult and very simple favors that you ask, simple requests that you ask someone in the house. That became very difficult. And I mean, grad from 2013 onwards, because that's when it started to get really worse. Um, I saw the gradual progression of my family take more and more steps back from me because
And
they
just
didn't
sort of
know how
allow it to happen.
exactly, and they saw that I was getting uncomfortable more and more and more with everything that I was doing. And
Yeah.
I would never like hold something with a full hand. I would hold it with my fingers, or just so that
Yeah.
the components later become easier. And so they just stopped, like in that sense, interacting with me in a more physical sense.
They would almost
Um,
not ask you to pass them something. They'd have learned,
that
I'll just get it myself because he's not going to want to do that.
exactly, and I felt terrible about it. I felt absolutely guilty and terrible about it because I used to be the kid who loved doing the laundry with my mom. I love
Yeah.
putting my hand in water. I love, just helping around the house, doing chores, doing stuff.
Bless you.
And I just couldn't anymore. And there were days when I know my mom was completely tired to the bone. Just like her back would be hurting, her arms would be hurting. She would want like someone to even massage her or something like that. And I was so debilitated by my own fears that I couldn't help her. And I mean, I didn't allow myself to step out of that discomfort and help her. And I would feel terrible because I would be like, I wish I could help
Yeah.
her out, lend her a helping hand, and somehow I can't. So it
That's
was
what I
tough.
found the most cruel about OCD. Now that I reflect back, it's the sadness that I think is the worst part, because once all of the, like, it feels normal at the time to not do these things because it's
Yeah.
so scary to break a compulsion when you're really in it, that you
Oh.
don't even, like, it's a secondary thought, like the loss
Mm,
of a
mm,
special moment with a loved one. But now that I look back, I think it's so terribly sad, isn't it? Like, for example, when I was a child, I was older than all my siblings, and I didn't have a huge amount of friends when I was like in like late primary, early high school. Like, I was a bit different. I didn't know where I sat with
mm,
people. And so my siblings are a pretty important part of my life. And then when OCD hit really badly, it was like bang, ripped me away from them. And I remember feeling like I missed them, and I missed all the times, and but I couldn't. And I think that is, and I've got a really bad memory of my dad coming to stay, because I was born in Yorkshire in the UK, but I live in Wales now. And I remember when my OCD was really bad, I didn't really leave the house at all, other than to go to work. And I would tend to keep the curtains drawn. And my excuse was, oh, if you're watching a movie, like, you have the curtains drawn, because I didn't want to see outside in case I saw triggers. And my dad came to stay for the weekend, as he regularly does. And in my head, it was normal for us to stay in all weekend, and for me to make
Yeah.
excuses like, oh, I'll make us lunch. Let's not go out, it's expensive. Or, oh, let's just watch some Family Guy or whatever, because we found that funny at the time. And then my mum said to me, oh, Dad said he came to stay. And he was like, it was weird because you wouldn't go out the whole time. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is
Mhm.
so mean. Like, why would he say that? But that is a pretty normal thing to say. Like, if you go and stay with them for a whole weekend, you've traveled 300 miles, and they
Yeah.
don't leave the house the whole weekend. And I reflect on things like that versus now when he comes, we're going out for dinners, we're going to the beach, we're doing everything. And I want to do that. I wouldn't want to stay in, it's boring. And you just think, oh, that's really sad, isn't it? Like, not sad as in like loser sad, just hurtful that
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was who I was and I didn't want those experiences.
And I mean, it was the same with me. Like I stopped, like after dinner, everybody sits in the lounge just discussing the day or discussing events
Yeah.
or whatever it is. I stopped doing that. I stopped spending time with my family. Even when guests came over, I would, because I didn't want to sit on the couches or anything, so I would just pass by. I would say hi, just chat a little while standing, and
Yeah.
then I would go to my room. And I would come and go just to make my presence known, but also not
Yeah.
stay enough. So I kind of stopped going to places. I stopped spending time with relatives who came over. I stopped spending time with my family. It just became more and more and more reclusive. Um,
And that, of course, we know now that's what feeds it, isn't it? And I find it really hard now, like, because when you've learned about recovery and you've been on that journey yourself, when somebody talks to you just in general life about the fact they suffer with anxiety, it can be really difficult to talk to them about it because you sort of know ways in which they could be helped, but they really don't want to. Like, I've got a friend in a network who has what does she call it? It's the one where you've got a severe fear of vomit, and it is really closely linked with OCD.
I had that.
You had that one, and it's called, and like, there's a name for it, isn't there?
No.
Anyway, there's a name for severe fear of vomit, but anyway, we'll call it OCD. It
Yeah, yeah.
sounds very likely that she has OCD when she's mentioned it, and I haven't. We're not close enough for me to
Bring it
raise
up.
this with her, but she'll say things like, "Oh yeah, no, I can't go to theme parks because with the rides, like, people might be sick, and
Yeah,
like, I'm terrified of vomit, so I can't go to those." And I'm like, the best thing that you could possibly do is go on a roller coaster behind someone who looks queasy, like, and build up to that. That would be the best thing. But I see then over the years that window closing in on people, and they don't realize at the time that the list now for her, I think, is growing of things she can't do.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's heartbreaking to observe when you know that, like you've got the knowledge of what would be needed. So all I ever say is like, oh, have a little read about exposures and CBT and recovery from anxiety, just to point them that, like, facing the fears is going to help, but I don't want to overstep the mark.
Yep. No, no, I mean, that's so true. I mean, because the list keeps growing and growing of what you can't, of things that you can't do, say, think, feel.
Yeah.
I'll give you like a small example. I was telling Nick about this the other day. So my contamination was not like I said, to do with dirt or anything of the sort.
Yeah.
It was to do with, like, if I don't like you as a person, I
Thanks.
would. Hypothetical example. I would feel like you are contaminating me. So anything to do
Right.
with. So I was saying that, huh? So I was saying that it's not just then um the physical contamination that bothers me. It's also then your name, Jade, for example.
Yeah. Yeah.
So so I would, in my messages, I would never write the word jade, or
Yeah.
jaded is a word, so I would never write that. Or I won't even write maid, because
Yeah.
maid rhymes So it's just
It
one letter
reminds you of the word.
reminds
Wow.
me of that association. So I mean, and I did this for so many years where, so instead of saying made, I would say create. I would look for
Wow.
to do so that I don't have to use that word. If your favorite color is white, let's say, I would stop wearing white clothes. I would stop associating things with white, or even talking about or writing the word white. I mean, it because and
And
then
it
the association
grows.
grows and grows and grows. It's more and more, and you yeah, there's no stopping it. It goes on, and the only way to stop it is to start interacting with that fear in
Yeah.
some way.
and
um
and the brain slowly learns it's not dangerous to write the word white. And
yes.
I think that's not going to be specific to that theme, because I think what it is about, I don't want to do anything that reminds me of that thought or that fear. So I don't want to bring up the trigger.
Yes.
It's kind of like that, isn't it? And that's the same with POCD or harm
Yeah.
OCD or any of them. Like anything
Yeah.
that relates to the fear. Like I know people get really scared of the color red if they've got harm OCD because it reminds them of like a horror movie, or well, exactly. So like
Yeah.
that's something that I haven't even noticed, and you've said it. But if I had extreme harm OCD, maybe I wouldn't be able to watch this video. And
But
like
yeah.
that's how it
Yeah.
goes, isn't it?
Exactly. And I mean, definitely, I think with intrusive thoughts, and with mental compulsions, it is about that immense fear of, um, what if these thoughts don't go away? What if I keep having these thoughts? And that means, what if I am triggered forever then? Because
Yeah.
a lot of those intrusive thoughts I was having were memories or names of people I had met and stuff. And I always, when I was so deep in suffering, I thought, these are things that have actually happened to me in life, or these are people I've actually met. So therefore my brain will always remember it. And there was
Yeah.
that suffocation as well, that I can never forget these things from my brain. I can never.
Yeah.
So will I always have these thoughts, and will they always bother me to this level? And it just becomes a repetitive cycle of you trying to filter your thoughts, or you trying to make your
Yeah.
thoughts away and distract yourself and think of other things, but obviously it
But
never works.
you can see why people end up in such a state, because obviously the natural thing, if you have a thought you don't want, the natural thing is to avoid any situation that's going to bring on the thought and try and
Exactly.
distract yourself. That's the natural reaction, and that's what's so cruel about it. Like I
Yeah.
don't are there any other illnesses where your instinct to cure yourself from it is to worsen it? Like if you had a broken leg, if your instinct was to repeatedly walk on it, like that's just
Hmm.
not, that's what's so crazy about it, isn't it? Like how, and that is why I think recovery is so difficult, because in order to get better you
You
have
have
to
to.
do the opposite of what feels like the natural. Like broken leg, again, recovery feels natural, you rest, and that's a natural thing,
uh,
whereas we're trying to go against everything our mind is telling us.
yes. Yes.
And I think this is why the awareness of what OCD is needs to raise, because there are a couple of people in my life where I've mentioned to them, this sounds like OCD, go ahead and do your research on it, it's not for me to tell you anything, like go and see somebody, research it. And they're like, wow, if I'd known that, I would have had where. And like for me, 17 years not knowing I had OCD in full-blown suffering, like that's what gets me, is that you don't even know you're making it worse, and you don't even, you know it's getting worse because of the amount of avoidance that's coming in, but you don't realize that what you're doing is making it worse. And
Yeah.
so now I've got so much compassion when people say things like, there's an aunt in the family who's never been abroad for 20 years, and someone will say, oh, she's so boring, she won't go on holiday, she won't go over to Italy, she doesn't want to go anywhere. And everyone's like, oh, that's ridiculous, that's so stupid, you know, why wouldn't you want to bond with your family? And I'm like,
Mhm.
I bet you anything she's got OCD or something like that. There'll be a reason why she doesn't want to
Yeah.
fly, or, and maybe there isn't, but I just think that what we've been through helps you to see every person as like, there is a reason they're that way. And I don't know
Mhm.
about you, but it can be quite difficult in society to have that mentality, because
Yeah.
you either have to choose to be inauthentic and like kind of agree a little bit. Like, I don't like to confront people. If someone says, oh, this is so stupid, I don't like to say, yeah, but think about this, because it's a bit
Mm,
annoying when someone does that. If you're frustrated about something, they're like, oh yeah, but it's not that bad, is it? You're like, shut up. Um,
exactly, exactly. Yeah.
but you can sense the people who don't want to sort of progress into like thinking more open-mindedly about other people, and so you kind of become a bit of a tell me more
Mhm.
about that. Like,
Yeah, I know. I think I've been that person. And also, it's also about just sometimes knowing where I want to invest my energy, like
yeah,
where,
totally.
like what conversation do I want to engage in? Because there's some people who I know I'm not going to meet every single day, or they're not like a regular part of my life, so they can. I don't talk to them about hey,
Yeah.
their perspective, but like maybe with my close friends I would, because I feel like maybe with them I can have that conversation.
Yeah, and I think that comes back to like relationship OCD with friendships, which I've had a lot in the past and didn't even realize. Yeah,
One.
like I used to think, oh, I can't be friends with them if we've got difficult political views. So I would raise political things and see how they responded and then distance myself from them based on
Mm,
their reactions. But now I just go, we have loads of fun. Like my best friend in the whole world, we have loads of fun doing stuff with our kids, going to the shops, having food, having a laugh. It's amazing. The
mm,
second we talk about anything to do with like parenting styles, just anything like that, we are wildly different. So it's just like, I just don't go there. So like, if that topic comes up, I'm like, oh yeah, no, I don't do it like that. And she's like, oh, that's stupid. I'm like, yeah, well, it's just how I do it, whatever. And we move on. And
yeah.
that's our best friend dynamic. It's like, I think you're always stupid. You think mine's stupid. Just whatever. Let's not talk about it.
Mm,
And
I was
that's
just
fun. Like, that's fun not to have to hold rigidly onto like, if you don't agree with
yeah,
me, this is awful. It's
yeah.
nice.
I think yesterday there was someone in the WhatsApp group who was talking about this, where she said that I don't confront people, and I said that used to be me all the time. And then I
Yeah.
would later in my head I would ruminate about, oh, I should have said this, I could have said this, I had the
Yeah.
perfect answer, why didn't I say this, and stuff like that. And I said, this is also a common misconception that I think people have, that being honest and straightforward means that you have to be rude or mean.
Yeah.
But it's a very, very common misconception, because people say that I can't be honest because that would be rude. No, you don't
Yeah.
have to be rude. And mean is a tone that you speak in. There's
Yeah.
always a way to say or speak your mind without sounding or coming off as rude or misbehaving in that
And
sense.
mean is really just lack of empathy. Like,
With empathy, or trying to create empathy with, like, in other people, it's about just showing them the logic with which other people operate, because you also have an
yeah.
internal logic by which you do things, and so do other
Yeah.
people have their internal logic. And you don't have to like it, but you can like I said, I mean, you can understand the mechanism with which they,
Yeah.
but you can still be like, oh, they're shit. So
Yeah.
I mean,
And I always feel like, I don't know about you, but every stage in life, I form a view on something. And
mm,
then I'll learn something else, and that view can shift. And it can shift like that. I can go from believing that the vegan diet is the best diet in the world to
mm,
actually, that might not be true. But I'm very flexible with it these days. I'm like,
yeah,
my best bet is this, but I'm going to be open to hearing other things to sort of really. And what I love about that is that I did used to be very rigid. Once I believed something to be true, it was true. And then as things grow in my knowledge, it's not true anymore, and something else is strongly true. So then I realized nothing is ever strongly true, because look how and I had feedback from a team member a few years ago, who said, once you've got something in your head that is what you're doing and what we're doing as a team,
yeah.
there is very little space for me to get in with an alternative option, like, I don't know, a new marketing agency or something. If I said, go with, we're going to do that. I'm sorry, but my husband is at the window with my baby waving at us.
Oh,
And now
okay.
he's run off because he's realized I'm on a call. And yeah, they said, you're very, go away. Hello. My children are looking at us. Hello. Hello. This is just my life now. They've all been locked out of the lounge, out of the family room. Bye bye. I'm like looking at Paul. So yeah, it's that thing of like they said, you know, we can't suggest a new thing if you've already decided that it's right. It's really difficult, and we have to really like all come to you individually and work on you and go back to and say, did she listen? And I was like, wow, like that's such an area for growth, like thinking
Yeah.
of different things. But I don't know about you, that can become a problem. I almost envy closed-minded people sometimes because think of my nana, she's gone 50 years with the same view about one person and she is shut down to challenging that thought. That must be a peaceful way to live in many ways.
I think so. Yes and no. I feel like
Mm,
that's peaceful in the sense that you don't have to. Um, I won't say the word peaceful, and I'll
not
tell you.
peaceful,
Yeah, yeah. It's an easy way to live because you don't have to
simple.
exert yourself or exert your brain
Yeah,
too much
yeah,
or challenge
yeah.
yourself. But it's not peaceful because I personally think that when you dislike someone or something and you hold that view rigidly for many years, if it
That's
does not,
painful.
it's painful and it does not stay in that, the size of that dislike does not stay this small.
No.
Over time, it compounds and grows and grows and grows. And
Yeah,
becomes so like, and I've experienced this with myself as well. And that's why I
yeah,
say
me
that
too.
at least I am that kind of person who, if I dislike someone or something and I keep on reinforcing that in my head over and over and over again, my bitterness would increase
Yeah,
over time, get more intense, and that
yeah,
would disturb my inner peace.
yeah.
Like
It's not good for you to feel that strongly, is it?
it's not. If like someone is passing, if I heard of them or they pass by, they message me or call me, I would, those really bad bitter feelings would come up. So
Yeah.
I think what something that really is starting from my early 20s that really helped me was just always, sorry,
Bless you.
it was just always staying open minded, open to newer ways of thinking, of behaving,
Yeah,
of seeing things. Even when I was chronically struggling with OCD, that was, I think, one thing I still retained,
yeah.
to have like the openness to look at things from different perspectives, which is why I think it really helped with recovery because I was never rigid about, no, I don't want to see things differently. This is how it is. This is how it
Yeah.
always. It just carried forward and just helped me catalyze the process of recovery that way.
I kind of was different because I was quite rigid going into recovery. So I've changed a lot in 4 years. But I always held rigid reviews about the vulnerable. And so there was like, you couldn't say anything to me about anything that wasn't going to be in the benefit of a vulnerable person. I would hold very, very rigid views around sort of good things. Now, a common misconception that I think that I had was that being open-minded means not holding strong views. I do hold
Oh,
quite strong views and I'm quite passionate about certain things, but that doesn't mean that I can't appreciate when someone has a different view. And open mindedness is like, well, I don't have a strong view because I don't understand either of these things.
yeah,
But I can see where both of you have arrived at with that. And then when you do form a strong view, I don't agree, but I can hear them talk and I
yeah.
can learn. And I think that's interesting because I went through a phase with recovery where I thought I can't have strong views.
Mm,
Um, but I do still hold strong views.
I think like with open mindedness, and I've experienced this even with friendship dynamics, with work and dynamics in the workplace, with brainstorming ideas for things like with anything at all. I think open mindedness, what it really helps with is that you are able to consider many different views, even if they are
Yeah,
and then somehow be able to find common ground between all of them and be able to find common solutions where
Yeah,
every person or every stakeholder in the situation is able to somehow benefit or be or have some part of what they were trying to contribute. So there's
yeah.
always, it's able to help you mitigate like opposing forces. I think that's the best way to put it.
And you arrive at a better societal balance because it's like, oh yeah, yeah, I hear you. I definitely don't see it that way. That's a really interesting factor for us to think about, because usually the person with the opposing view isn't saying, I believe that the people you care about are not important. They're more saying, no, actually, this issue is really important for me. And if you can strip out the disagreement and go, actually, yeah, let's talk about your issue that bothers you as well, because that's a big deal. And then, and
If I
but
would
I think, yeah,
that to like even recovery, I think like that really helps with unconditional self acceptance as well,
yeah,
because you are trying to mitigate the opposing voices in your head. So the
yeah,
very horrible, terrible, intrusive thoughts that are so scary, but then the values that you hold as a person,
yeah,
where like no, I must not, I must not, I must not. So it's
yeah.
about reducing that tension
Loosening.
between like
Yeah,
the two thoughts, and that's where I feel like unconditional self acceptance, that analogy can be applied there, because you can disagree with a part of yourself, you can dislike
yeah,
a part of yourself, you can reject a certain part of yourself in that sense, but you cannot reject your entire self or
yeah.
your whole self and not negate your entire personhood because of that one thing. um yeah,
Yeah, and like with intrusive thoughts, it's a difficult topic to talk about when people are new to the idea. And I only talk to my experience of my own journey. Like obviously I'm not a coach or a therapist, it's just as a peer. I struggled for a little while with, you know, what am I supposed to agree with these thoughts or am I supposed to? And you don't want to become compulsive, like, oh yeah, that's not in line with my values. It's definitely not that. It's just loosening up about what's acceptable to go through your head. Like if you hold your values so strongly that it's making a thought latch super strong, that's probably the issue, is that you're, this must never ever come into my head. And so then it's like the pink elephant thing of like, it will. So loosening those like views of what's horrendous and what's not, without deciding to think, oh yeah, it's fine, it's a good thing, it's a good thought, because clearly it's not and we don't want it.
yeah,
But just softening that a little bit,
yeah, yeah.
definitely.
I think like it also like, so you know how with Paul David's book he talks about just letting the body heal itself in that sense, like not trying to get rid of anxiety, not trying
Yeah,
to anxiety or any of those things, and letting the body do its own way of um getting the nervous system back to what it used to be. I think I kind of think intrusive thoughts are the same in the sense, because
yeah,
with me, I had those mental compulsions of trying to constantly get rid of my intrusive thoughts, constantly
yeah,
trying
me
to
too.
things, good things, good things. And I think it's also the brain. I mean, when intrusive thoughts come in, it's also kind of the brain's way of trying to push you to heal itself, in the sense that,
Yeah,
because it's like, make space for these, make space, soften your boundaries and your rigidity towards the existence of these thoughts, because the more we are
yeah,
trying to resist them, the more they're coming in. But the brain is kind of like pushing us to be like, let the
just
thoughts
leave them alone.
be there.
Like I always used to say, it's like every time you see when you put a post-it note on it and mark it as important. And so there are so many, like a great example is with themes that don't trigger you. Like I
Mm,
always notice stuff that doesn't trigger me, and I think if I had that theme, that would be a sticky note in my head that I'd have marked. So, for example, we went to a restaurant once and I noticed a pile of muck in the corner of the room. I'm
mm,
assuming that someone with health concerns about what they eat and cleanliness would look at
yeah.
that and be like,
Oh my
oh my
god.
gosh. Or once a waiter, like he was bringing the food and as he walked over, did that and then handed the food, like a little bit gross,
Oh,
but it
mm,
wasn't, it was very subtle. It was like kind of like that.
yeah, yeah,
And I think perhaps if I had that theme, I'd be
yeah,
like, did he just wipe his nose or did he touch? Yeah. But
yeah.
things like that don't latch, have never latched with me. And I think that's what's interesting is all these things happen for everyone, but we stick post-it notes to the ones that affect us. A bit like how people with jokes say you must never joke about that. That's really offensive, yet to you, but you're happy with all the other jokes that are nothing to do
Yeah,
with things you get offended by.
exactly.
And it's kind of that thing of like we notice the things that we're latched to.
We notice the things that that in that sense our OCD self wants to notice.
Mm.
Um, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in the sense, oh my God, I'm so thirsty as well. I really want to have that. Is that a spot?
Do you have this is so yeah, this is orange squash.
Yeah,
And
we have that
my
in.
friend lived in Italy for a year and apparently they don't have it there, and so she's really obsessed with it. And I know
Yeah,
Rob was saying that he really likes orange squash.
I know some people who don't have squash
How is
in
this
their.
possible?
I don't know. I mean, like we have it here. We're happy that we have it here, and we have it during summertime. In fact, I'll when I go home after this, I will. I'm probably going to have some squash because I'm feeling really thirsty now.
They do. So like I this is a funny one as well. Like I drink more water when it's squash, but I'm aware that it's not that great for you to drink loads of squash. But I'm like, I'd rather be hydrated and it just be a little bit of sugar that I don't want. I force myself to drink a couple of glasses of water a day, but I can drink quite a lot of squash.
Yeah, person like I mean, naturally my body works that way. That even in the summer, I don't feel very thirsty. So the
Mm.
water that I consume, because I know I have to consume water to stay hydrated, I have to think about it and then have water. It
Yeah.
has come very naturally to me.
I'm pretty bad at signing out from my body sometimes. Like when I'm busy with my children or work, I
Mm,
know I need to have a drink, and my body is telling me, like, you're a bit dehydrated here. And I like, yeah, I'll get a drink now, and then I'll get a glass and I'll like have a sip and I'll forget about it. And so some of the work I've been doing recently is just trying to listen to my body a bit more, because I think with OCD recovery, I had to do a lot of work on being less rigid about things. And so I'd like, don't get so obsessed with not burning out. But what's happened is I've become so chilled that I will be on my phone for a bit longer or watching loads of Netflix or like not drinking enough water. And I'm like, actually, I've gone too far now. I do it. It's not compulsive to look after your body and check in with yourself.
right.
So,
Right.
excuse
And
me.
you do go on, like, I think when working on recovery, you go through different phases and you can go on a tangent, but then
Yeah.
you kind of like come
You come
back
back, yeah.
I balance then.
And
It's
not being obsessive about that too. Like life's imperfect.
I think for me, so I was really big on, for example, like listening to your body, what the body is trying to tell you, all those things. And my dad is a both my parents are homeopathic doctors as well. So
Oh
I mean,
wow.
yeah, so I get that from them as well in the sense that, that kind of pathology and have that sensibility. But I had to, when I started working on recovery, I had to actively not listen to my body
Yes.
because even with social media, the advice that generally goes on is listen to your body, what it's trying to tell you. But with OCD, like our
No.
gut hijacked, our sense about listening to your body is hijacked as
Don't
well. So
listen to your gut. Don't
listening to
listen to your
my
gut
body,
instinct or your body.
exactly. Me listening to my body meant doing compulsions, doing avoidance. Jade, I think like we should end over here because I understand that obviously you have to go as well. But we will have another call hopefully soon with Nick, and maybe we can also
That
do
would be
another.
so fun.
Yeah, if Nick isn't able to join, maybe you and me could do another one because we have a lot more to cover as well. I think.
It just makes me giggle. Like this is a nice place to end. Like
Yeah.
acceptance of life is not perfect. Like we're trying to do this video, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like the kids have been in the garden with their dad and banging on the glass the whole time, like waving to me, and now they finally burst in, and it's just
Uh,
funny, and it like this video maybe that affects it, and you just think, okay.
that we can't edit things that perfectly for the channel all the time. Life happens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We just need
But
someone to come in and play drums behind you now.
yeah, yeah, maybe soon. Thankfully, they're closed down today, but the office was open, so that's why I came over here. So, but
Amazing.
really great chatting with you again. and hopefully we can do this again. And so, yeah, good luck with the rest of your day and have a nice weekend.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Momin. See you soon.
Bye.